IPPC is continuing to work on the next report. And unfortunately, I was in a meeting of the IPPC. Major developing countries really are postponing the whole process for new scientific publications. While, and I agree with also speakers that said, we see the evidence. Science always talk about an average on 10 years, 20 years average, and also argue last year we had 1.5, but we should look into the longer time range. Let me give you an example for the Netherlands, where I'm from. About 15 years ago, 2 major floods we had by the river the Meuse. And the scientific community said, oh, that only happens once every 150 years. We don't need to do additional things. Then 3 years later, it happens again. Then the science community said, yes, but once in 150 years is an average. It doesn't mean it takes 150 years before it happens again. And then 2 years later, it happens again. So, and then the people said, we don't believe it. And then really what also the minister from Bangladesh indicated. The people said, we don't accept, and the government had to act. So that really shows that if people start changing, also governments will change. In the UNFCCC process, of course, parties are those who decide. But we also have very clear voices of non-governmental organizations that are heard. We have events that we organize, and also those organizations really push government in some direction. And for the mountains, as we have the dialogue over here, I want to repeat, the COP only decided on one dialogue. It is up to you to unite and ensure that you get the mountain as a more permanent discussion point in the UNFCCC and on the STEPSA.
Other reason why I'm particularly happy, although I would rather be happy for some other reasons, is that when we talk about the mountains and the Hindu Kush Himalayas, this is ground zero for climate change. This is where climate change happens. And if we want to understand what is going to happen to the world, we see what is happening in the Himalayas today. So this is the proverbial canary in the coal mine. So if the mountains are healthy, the planet is going to be healthy. So this is really where the discourse should start. And I thank His Excellency, the Right Honorable Prime Minister, for his leadership in this issue. I remember he was very vocal during the last UN General Assembly. Then he took it forward to the COP28 process. And now we are here organizing a dialogue of experts. But we don't need experts to tell us what is happening. All of the excellent presentations that we have had, including from the Chief Minister, these are facts that we already know. It is nothing new. So why are things not changing when the science is so clear, when the science is so conclusive? Why are things not changing? We can talk about the impacts, we can talk about the effects, but if you only talk about the effects, then we become also part of the problem. So where does the solution lie? When we talk about solutions, we look at, if we are treating a disease, we look at the symptoms of the disease and the disease itself. What we are doing here is talking about the symptoms of the disease. We are not talking about the disease itself. And that disease is carbon emissions. So unless we decarbonize, whatever we try to do in terms of adaptation and resilience is never going to be enough. Here we are talking about resilience, we are talking about adaptation, but there are limits to adaptation. There are limits to resilience. We are asked to formulate national adaptation plans on the one hand, and our carbon emissions increase on the other. How can you solve a problem by making the problem worse? We are growing the problem and then we are talking about solutions. This discourse has to change. And when we talk about emissions, it doesn't really matter, with all due respect, whether Bangladesh and Nepal achieve net zero tomorrow. That is not going to make any difference to the global emissions. The G20 nations account for 81% of global emissions. And if I just think back to what Selvin Hart on behalf of the UN said, we have the moral voice. Yes, we have the moral voice. We talk about climate justice. And yes, climate justice, there are three elements that I would like to bring out. It applies to Nepal, it applies to Bhutan, it applies to Bangladesh. First is, as the Chief Secretary said, those who have least caused the problem are the most impacted, number one. Number two, those who have the least capacity to adapt are being asked to adapt beyond their capacity. And number three, governments are having to choose between fighting climate change and fighting poverty, promoting food security, promoting sustainable development. And that is a greater injustice. No country in the world should have to choose between fulfilling their development aspirations and fighting climate change. Why should it be either or? This is a problem that we have not created. And we saw from the Chief Minister's presentation that you need billions for your adaptation. In Bangladesh, just in this year, we have allocated $3.5 billion to fight climate change among 25 line ministries. That money could have been spent building roads, building hospitals, building educational institutions, empowering the youth, empowering the women, but I'm having to spend it on climate change adaptation. So to me, really, the issue is, why is there a lack of political will? Why is there a lack of political will? That has not been mentioned here. Why do countries commit time and again during the COP process and don't deliver? We are talking about trillions for adaptation. We'll be talking about a new finance goal in Baku. The billions have not been delivered, and we are talking about trillions. We can subsidize fossil fuels to the extent of $7 trillion a year, but the national adaptation plans are not funded. This, I'm sorry to say, but this double standard has to stop, because time is running out. Time is running out. What will you do when all the glaciers go? When all they melt? So for us, it's existence. If you don't have fresh water, how will the people of Bangladesh survive? And Bangladesh is squeezed because we have got glacial melt in the north and we have got rising sea levels in the south. So the argument, the narrative in terms cries freer loss. It's not just the mountains. It's the ice sheets, it's the snow, it's the glaciers, it's the permafrost. And how do we then globalize the mountain agenda? That is really the challenge that we have. And we are not just talking about, we are not just talking about Bangladesh and rising sea levels. If you look at the US, the eastern seaboard of the US, from Boston down to Miami, Louisiana, these are going to be areas underwater if sea level continues to rise. So when development partners want to help us, yes, we appreciate your help, we appreciate the funding, we appreciate the capacity building, but the biggest help that you can do is to stop the emissions. That is really the help that we need. Now that may sound uncomfortable, but that is the reality. And Selvin Hart said, speak truth to the power. What is the truth? This is the truth, that we have to stop emissions. If we don't do that, now we are what? We are on 2.6 degrees Celsius, 2.6, based on current pledges. If 100% of the pledges are met, we are going to be 2.6 degrees. What is going to be left of the Himalayas, the glaciers, if it is 2.6? Even at 1.1, look at the damage, look at the destruction, look at the heat waves. Even 1/10 of a degree makes a difference. So we are almost double where we should be. So this narrative has to change. And it's all very well, us being supported, but I think the support where it is most needed is in that. And the important thing is the choices that we make today. Of course, there is some damage which has already been caused. That's irreversible. We have to live with that. The IPCC report also says that. Now what we can do is to limit the future damage. So even if we achieve 1.5 degrees Celsius, still 30% of the ice, the glaciers will be lost in the Himalayas. That's gone forever. And it will take thousands of years, if at all, for us to come back to the current level. So the time is running out. What we need is not just words. We need action. And that action has to be delivered now, because tomorrow is going to be too late. What we can do from here is to not talk about it just as the problem of the mountains. It is a problem for the world. If we can get it right here, we get it right for the rest of the world. So this is a global existential issue that we are talking about. That's the importance of what we are going to do over the next 2 days. And I think we have the minds, we have the solutions, we can also perhaps get the funding, but the political will to act is something that we cannot generate here. That has to be generated in the capitals of the world. Because whatever we do, once we cross the 1.5 degree threshold, is going to be too little, too late. We don't want to be in that situation. So Bangladesh, of course, stands in strong solidarity with the other nations who are facing this. And for us, it's not just sea level. We will lose 18% of our land area. Millions will be displaced, climate refugees. Salinity intrusion is impacting our productivity, our food security. We also have droughts. Just a small country like Bangladesh experiencing the full spectrum of climate change impacts. So we really need to act. We call it an existential, not just a threat, it's a crisis. It is happening now. It is not something that will happen 10 years from today. We are living it. We are witness to it. The other area we do, when it comes to funding, when it comes to adaptation, yes, we must have a strong voice. When it comes to research, the world is now waking up to the imperatives of adaptation. They want to know how has Bangladesh done well. They will want to know how has Nepal coped. So how can we combine our resources? And the last point, let's not just look to others. Let us see what we can do, how much we can fix by our own initiatives, by our own creativity. And I think that will make the difference as we move forward. Let me end by thanking the Ministry of Environment of Nepal for the excellent arrangements. I know it's going to be a very productive 2 days, and I once again thank the Right Honorable Prime Minister of Nepal for his initiative, for his leadership, and we look forward to that going up to Baku, COP29, and thereafter COP30 in Brazil. I wish you all excellent deliberations. Thank you very much.
Climate and people. These three connected issues that impact our lives and livelihood have brought us together today. More than 2,500 years ago, Lord Buddha, whose birthday we celebrate tomorrow, referred to the Himalayas as Pabatraja, Lord of Mountains, and said to his disciples, "The good shine from afar like the Himalayas." 2 eons later, we are at the brink of these mountains losing their shine given the impact of the climate crisis. It is difficult when you are living in a threatened environment to lead a peaceful life. The 2015 Paris Agreement seeks to keep global temperature rise well below 2 degrees centigrade this century and to pursue efforts to limit it to 1.5 degrees. But according to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, if emissions remain unchecked, warming is likely to reach 1.5 degrees centigrade around 2040 and 2 degrees by 2065. We need a unified voice. We need a collective action to advocate to keep the temperature below the 1.5 increase, as Chief Secretary rightly shared with us. But what is happening to the people of the Himalayas because of climate change is an appalling injustice and a searing indictment of the fossil fuel age. These communities need climate justice. And Nepal, my Nepal, is well positioned to advocate for increased attention and dedicated access to climate finance mechanisms for mountain communities based on the principles of climate justice. Nepal should forge ahead and become, and is becoming, the common voice of mountain countries. Dialogue like this one that we are currently engaging in should translate into a joint roadmap for continuous advocacy in international negotiations. So what next? Climate finance needs to grow significantly to ensure investment in resilience and maximize the effectiveness of nationally determined contributions or new national adaptation plans to attract financial support. Ambitious national climate action plans that covers all greenhouse gases and are fully aligned with the 1.5 degree temperature limit becomes a country's investment for the future. They become economic blueprints for growth and jobs, business investment for productivity opportunities and security for people and workforce participation, especially for women. After that, perhaps we need governments to establish a climate and development platform whereby climate vulnerable countries can attract private sector investments through innovative financing structures and risk mitigation mechanisms. These would facilitate large-scale projects and private investments in climate action, biodiversity, and social development. And I love the examples that were mentioned by Ms. Karen Welch, with the references that she mentioned. My dear Nepali colleagues and friends, you have hit the ground running with your national adaptation program actions. The world has been noticing your leadership on climate change issues for mountainous countries. Last year, the hosting of the highly successful Mountain Agenda visit of the Secretary General alerted the world to the magnitude of the crisis hitting the Himalayas. And this was also followed by the high-level roundtable at COP28 led by Prime Minister Pushpa Kamal Dahal. The meeting today also, and the hosting of this critical mass of critical thinkers and experts, the findings should lead to the SABSTA meeting in June 2024. So badai to the government of Nepal and the Ministry of Forestry and Environment for taking the lead on this agenda, and for all those who contributed to help this organize this critical event. As the special representative of the Secretary General mentioned, UN globally and the UN in Nepal is committed to support you in implementing your obligations under the Paris Agreements and in your efforts to be champions to the Mountain Agenda. And I'm very proud to see all my colleagues, the UN colleagues present here. I wish you all the best in your discussions on Bahad, Manis, Rajal, Baya, Parivartan. Deri Dhanyavad, and the best of luck.
I can only speak to the Australian experience, and that is that we put Jestha at the heart of everything we do, every development activity, but also across all of our foreign policies. So gender equality, social inclusion, disability inclusion are at the heart of everything we do, and we see success with this. I think it also relates to the localisation and local government issues that were mentioned by our respected Deputy Mayor. I would like to emphasise again, in Nepal, in everything that we're doing here, We work very much at that local level. We're very pleased at the moment to be working with ISIMOD over a 5-year program that focuses on localisation, that focuses on working with local people, local communities, on nature-based solution, on working with local governments to access climate finance, and making sure that things are happening at the grassroots, because I think at the point that we're all making is that it's at the grassroots, it's with youth, it's with proper representation by all members of our communities, that there is a voice for change, and that politicians and the political level are taking forward then the necessary activity at that global policy level. Thank you.
We are very happy to welcome our very delighted guest, Honorable Minister Sabir Hussain Chaudhary for Environment, Forest and Climate Change of Bangladesh, and Honorable Yonchen Phunso, Minister for Agriculture and Livestock, Rural Government of Bhutan. Your Excellencies, kindly accept our welcome. I welcome Honorable Minister of Federal Parliament who have paid keen interest on climate change. I would like to welcome all the dignitaries in the dais who has contributed and supported us to a large extent. I also extend my sincere welcome to our esteemed international guests. I would like to welcome to Chair of the UNFCCC's subsidiary body of scientific and technological advice, Special Representative of the President of the Kyrgyz Republic on mountain issue, Hana Hamdi, Chair of the Public Service Commission of the Royal Government of Bhutan, Director General of ISIMOD and Intergovernmental Organizations, Director General of International Big Cat Alliance, Global Coordinator of Mountain Partnership, and all the participants. I would like to welcome all experts, keynote presenters, moderators, panelists, and speakers in the event. I heartily welcome to all participants who accepted our request and participated in this August gathering. Honorable Chair and Excellencies, mountains are the nature-gifted avenues and amenities. They are not only property of Himalayan countries, but also the property of entire world. All of us know that climate change is creating challenge to the entire globe, irrespective of the continents, regions, zones, and locality. The effects on mountains are severe and critical. Both mountains and island countries and their people are facing multiple crises of temperature rise, erratic rainfall, drought and desertification, landslides, floods, inundation, forest fire, glacier melting, sea rise level, and many more challenges. The effect of climate change are equally witnessed to downstreams. This has created challenge to people who live in the area and downstream to it. The challenges that adverse effects are observed in the culture, agriculture, biodiversity, economy, tourism, and livelihood of the people. I would like to recall the 37th conference of the EFAO for Asia and Pacific recommended to support country-specific financial investment plan tailored to the specific context of each country, including high mountain and Himalayan countries, and continue facilitating private sector engagement in agricultural food system transformation in line with the EFAO strategy. Moving further ahead, it's now time to call for saving and protecting mountains from climate change effect. In this connotation, Government of Nepal organized this dialogue with broad issue concerning mountains, peoples, and climate change. We think the voice raised in this dialogue represent the voice of the mountainous countries and the downstream countries. This dialogue on mountain people and climate change is carried out with the following objectives: develop a shared platform group of mountain partnership to raise awareness of mountain vulnerability to climate change, promote collaboration for common understanding and proposition of the mountain countries, and give mountain communities their due attention in international and regional processes, explore and exchange knowledge, research and innovative solutions for adapting to climate change, addressing loss and damage to mountain peoples, share value and promote multilateralism, collaborations and partnership concerning technology transfer, capacity development, and climate finance for mountainous nations and downstream nations, and their inhabitants. We want to generate additional resources in terms of finance and technologies. This two-day dialogue will be centered around three broad themes: climate, science, and evidence from mountain and beyond, mountain solutions, common ground and common understanding, and mountain perspective, resources and opportunities, and 9 sessions. Excellencies and participants, we welcome your valuable contributions, expertise, and knowledge to make this event successful. The outcome of this dialogue will synthesize our knowledge that will help to address our common and interlinked issues. We hope this will help to streamline our voices in the upcoming UNFCCC expert dialogue on mountain and climate change and take additional decision on mountain and amplifying the finance and adaptation target for common benefits. I welcome all media persons and request to convey the message to all stakeholders for better outcomes. Finally, I welcome everyone and active participant for making this dialogue successful. I wish you a pleasant stay in spiritual, beautiful, and historic place of Chandragiri here in Chandragiri. Thank you. Namaste.
We are gathering in this very important event in International Expert Dialogue on Mountain People and Climate Change. Mountains are our precious assets, supporting to the lives and livelihood of people living in mountain, hills, tarai, and the coastal areas. However, climate change is creating challenges to the entire globally, irrespective of continent, region, zone, and locality. Both mountain and coastal countries and their people are facing multiple crises of temperature rise, erratic rainfall, drought and desertation, landslide, floods, inundation, forest fire, glacier melting, and sea rise level. Climate change is a diabetes to our mother nature, but it can be cured through our proactive and urgent actions. Let me recall the recent visit of Honorable UN Secretary General Guterres in Annapurna region, where he has stressed the need for the world to urgently consider the threat of climate change for the mountain ecosystem and mostly the mountain livelihoods, culture and traditions. Gandaki province is naturally gifted with rich biodiversity, wetland, running water, mountains and rich culture. However, our region is among the most impacted by climate change. We have witnessed extreme weather events and unimaginable scale of climate-induced loss and damage. The recent flash flood and climate havoc in Manang and Mustang are the clear but bitter reality of visible climate change impacts. Also, we have witnessed the negative impacts of climate change in our infrastructure. Let me draw your attention to the massive loss and damage to hydropower and development infrastructure due to the climate extreme events and disasters in recent years. We need more urgent actions and mostly resource flowing to the sub-national government and respond effectively to the impact of climate change. Let me reiterate our commitments. Moving further ahead, it's now time to call for saving and protecting mountain from climate change effects. I urge all the international experts to focus on the blue and green economy sectors, which will be the immense opportunity to address the impacts of climate change and also offer solution to climate change. Finally, I wish the international experts dialogue will provide clear roadmap and lay out concrete pathways for the climate solution. Thank you.
This week, as we gather here to celebrate the historic achievement of the inclusion of issues of mountains in the outcome texts of COP28 in Dubai, we are also here to discuss and chart out way forward for addressing the challenges faced by mountains and to recognize the critical roles of mountains in addressing the climate change. The climate teams of Nepal, Kyrgyzstan, and Bhutan deserve a special mention for this achievement in Dubai. Honorable Prime Minister, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, while Bhutan is proud to be the world's first carbon negative country, achieving this status entailed difficult choices, foregoing numerous economic opportunities to tread the path of sustainable development. Our Constitution mandates maintaining 60% forest cover to ensure sustainable ecosystem services and to fulfill our commitment to remain carbon neutral forever. These are proud achievements in our global climate commitment to move towards net zero. However, as we live in an interdependent world, the efforts and sacrifices of a single country or a group will not be able to drive significant impacts in our fights against climate change. Even under the best case scenario, wherein global warming is limited to 1.5 degrees centigrade, projections indicate that 1/3 of the glaciers in the Hindu Kush Himalayan region will disappear by 2100. As a country with over 98% of our land covered by mountainous terrain, the alarming annual retreat of our glaciers by 13 to 23 meters poses significant risks to our nation. This rapid melting not only imperils our glaciers, but also increases the risk of glacial lake outburst floods, posing devastating threats to the lives and livelihood of communities both in the mountains and further downstream. Climate change also threatens to undo Bhutan's environmental milestones in the areas of biodiversity conservation. My immediate thought therefore goes to that of the fate of charismatic snow leopards that roam our mountains and have played critical role in regulating the mountain ecosystem as a keystone species. While other species at the lower elevations may adapt and shift upwards, the snow leopard, dependent on glaciers and snow, faces the risk of extinction. Honorable Prime Minister, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this dialogue comes at an opportune time for securing our majestic mountain ecosystem, and the next 2 days should yield significant inputs for the mountain roadmap and the strategy for Bonn 2024 and beyond. Therefore, the Royal Government of Bhutan urges all countries and stakeholders to recommend concrete outcomes that are sustainable and would strengthen the resilience of these ecosystems. Our discussions here in Kathmandu should create linkages to the UAE framework for global climate resilience to take mountain agendas forward with targets on ecosystems and mountains to drive action on mountain issues and the role of mountains in transboundary adaptation and international cooperation. Bhutan, in partnership with everyone here, seeks once again to echo that next month's Bonn dialogue must lead to an inclusive roadmap, leaving no one behind in the process. And we reiterate our call for a separate work program on mountains and climate change. The fight against climate change, as I said earlier, cannot be won without protecting mountain ecosystems, as these mountains act as a giant carbon sinks. Their degradation would accelerate global warming, creating domino effect of environmental disasters, both for the mountains and the downstream ecosystems. Therefore, we must all act with sense of urgency and resolve. In conclusion, as we, politicians, policymakers, and experts, gather here, immersed in technicalities and negotiation narratives, I wish to end my statement with the poem of my 11-year-old son, one among millions who call these mountains home. I quote, "Majestic peaks that touch the sky, guardians of earth, standing high, homes to cultures old and grand, nourishing every arid land. We must protect their towering grace, for in their strength our future lies." Unquote. So with this, I would once again like to take this opportunity on behalf of the Royal Government of Bhutan as well as my delegations here to sincerely thank the Honorable Prime Minister and his government here in Nepal for hosting this very important dialogue here. And likewise, I like to take this opportunity to wish everyone gathered here who are participating here in this dialogue a very fulfilling 2 days dialogue. So thank you so much, Tashi Dalek, and Namaste.
Today, we mark the International Day for Biological Diversity, and I am pleased to have you in the country with rich biological, ecological, and cultural diversity. At the outset, on the behalf of the Government of Nepal and on my own, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to you for your valuable presence in this global dialogue on mountains, people, and climate. I also want to convey my heartfelt thanks for your very valuable remarks, comment, and very powerful statement you just made. Our collective journey towards recognition of mountains has yielded positively. COP28 presented a crucial opportunity for nations to come together and reaffirm their commitment to ambitious climate action. Let me recall on collective successes establishing mountain agenda at COP28 through the high-level roundtable on call of the mountains hosted by Nepal. We must build upon the momentum of past efforts to translate commitment into tangible action, preserving the delicate balance of mountains in environment for future generations. Distinguished participants, mountains are invaluable natural assets. These regions are home to 15% of the global population, and nearly half of the biodiversity hotspot host a wide variety of flora and fauna, and the communities with different language, culture, and traditions. Mountains play a pivotal role in the global climate system, contributing to maintain the global temperature and serving as water towers for billions of people living in the mountain and downstream, including coastal areas. Let me reiterate the recent reports of Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which indicates that climate change impact in mountains is unprecedented. It is evident that occupying the front lines of the global climate crisis, mountainous countries are disproportionately burdened by the adverse effect of warming. The impact is intensifying. Snow and glacier melt across mountains region, alerting water availability and increasing extremes. This severely threatens water security and heightens the risk of disaster, impacting millions dependent on these water sources and both upstream and downstream countries. Climate change is a grave concern for us who are experiencing the peril of our pristine natural resources. The warming rate is disproportionately higher in the mountains than adjoining plains. Projections alert us that the average temperature increase in the mountain will be over 1.8 degrees Celsius by 2050, which we are discussing to limit global temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius by the end of this century. Glacial lake outbursts, floods are perennial threats in Nepal and other mountainous countries. On current emission pathways, 80% of glacier current volume will be gone by the end of this century. Mountain economy is heavily reliant on climate sensitive sector like agriculture, tourism, hydropower, and physical infrastructure, and mountain communities and ecosystem have worst climate impacts. Climate-induced disaster and other impacts are severely affecting mountains' livelihood, resulting degradation of resources, declining production and productivity, and a displacement of people, their culture, their heritage, knowledge, and their practice. Climate change is differentially impacting to those poor, women, indigenous, and disadvantaged communities who primarily depend on upon weather-based livelihood, have limited information, resources, and capacity to cope with the changes. Distinguished participants, I firmly believe that a unified mountain voice is urgently needed to address the growing concern about the effect of climate change on mountain communities and the ecosystem service they provide. The urgency of limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius must be complemented by a focus on regional and global cooperation to enhance mountain people well-being, boost ecosystem diversity, stability, sustainability, and identify sustainable development options that consider local requirements. I have strongly highlighted these issues in all national and global forums, including 78th United Nations General Assembly and the Climate Ambition Summit. Nepal is also championing this agenda in different international forums as the chair of the group of LDCs. In my previous deliverable, including COP28, I have strongly demanded the necessity of initiating a dialogue on mountains and climate change to realize the grip of the mountains communities, find possible solutions, and bring them out of environmental injustice. As a result of this conscious and systematic effort, COP28 outcomes recognize mountains ecosystem as critical importance for integrated response and agreed to hold an expert dialogue on mountains and climate change at the 60th session of the UNFCCC, subsidiary body for implementation and subsidiary body for scientific and technological advice, which is scheduled to take place next month. We have a long way to go in terms of forging global consensus and support in advancing the mountain agenda and finding sustainable solutions for mountains and beyond. Realizing the urgency to a prompt action to deal with the climate change on mountains, we have organized this international dialogue. I expect that this platform provides us the opportunity to collaborate, share knowledge, and forge partnership for collective progress to make meaningful strides in addressing the climate crisis and securing a better world for generations to come. This expert dialogue is not just an event but a strategic initiative that aims to strengthen, coordinate, and prioritize mountain-based action in the context of climate change and encourage mountain countries and agencies to collaborate on UNFCCC mountain work program and mandates. This discourse should allow government and stakeholders in mountain countries and their allies to better understand mountain climate concern and solution, share expertise and experience, and enable synergies. More crucially, the dialogue aims to produce concrete roadmaps and strategy for mountain at the expert dialogue on mountain and climate change in SAPSTA 60 session next month and beyond. We must not forget the significance of synergetic collaboration among the LDC group, G77 China, and other climate negotiation group of the UNFCCC. Our positions are crystal clear. Due to an appalling injustice inflicted on us, our people and mountain ecosystem are severely affected by climate-induced disaster, and we strongly demand for the justice. Delivery of adequate and predictable and accessible funds and technology is urgent to support science-based, locally led climate action. The full operationalization of loss and damage fund in a transparent and equitable way should be the foremost priority. We urge to put the most vulnerable women, youth, children, disabled people, indigenous people, and local communities in the mountains as the priority of climate action. Nepal is fully committed to the Paris Agreement, including achieving net zero greenhouse gas emission by 2045, 5 years earlier than the global target. We will fully utilize our hydropower potential to secure clean energy and already maintaining 45% forest covered land. Let me take this opportunity to once again welcome all the distinguished guests and delegates in this historic and important event. I am really pleased to recognize the gracious presence of the Honorable Minister from our neighboring countries, Honorable Jestha Chair, high-level delegates from developing and developed countries, and wider representation of civil society, scientists, researchers, private sector, and media. I appreciate and thank Mr. Antonio Guterres, the United Nations Secretary General, for his visit to Nepal last year, collecting first-hand information of climate change impact from Nepal and from local communities who are facing the climate crisis, and his appeal to immediate action to address environmental crisis. Please join us in our collective efforts to protect and promote the mountains, mountain civilization, mountain ecosystem, and inhabitants of mountains, and seeks to garner collaboration and solidarity to tackle the common challenge posed by climate change in the mountains. Finally, I wish the great success in yielding tangible outcomes during this 2 days dialogue and your pleasant stay in beautiful mountainous country, Nepal. I also wish the success of the forthcoming international expert dialogue on mountains to be held in Bonn of Germany. We have all our support to make this event more meaningful and forward-looking.
Hard hit by the climate change, and vulnerability is increasing day to day to the people and livelihood over there, and it posing threats to the global temperature. And global concerns on the mountain climate is also increasing. That's a good part. At least we have the voice from everywhere, every corner of the society, that mountains should remain the same. And mountain climate was an important agenda in COP28, held just last year. And probably it was the first ever global stake take, which included 5 mentions of mountains. And Nepal strongly, and Nepalese delegation was led by the Right Honorable Prime Minister at that time, and Nepal strongly raised the issue, highlighting the severity of climate change impact on the mountains. And there is one very important aspect, that mountain agenda in 60th session of the subsidiary body for scientific and technological advice, Jestha, in June 2024. And this is one particular topic on there is expert dialogue on mountains and climate change. So this is a good part that we are taking forward also. Why mountains means for all? Why mountains matters for all? As water towers, they provide fresh water to nearly 80% of the humanity. As ecosystem balancer, provide fresh air and maintain a healthy ecosystem. As it is as home to more than 1 billion people. Of course, this estimation varies greatly. Sometimes the people say that it's less than 1 billion, and sometimes the estimate shows that it's more than 2 billion also. So the estimation varies, but again, we believe that the population is more than 1 billion in the mountains. And as source, this is livelihood source for many of the people over here, as the people live in mountain, and their source of livelihood is also the mountain. And as habitat, it is to more than 50% of the wild species, fauna and flora. And it has the rich culture and indigeneity. It is the attractive destination for tourism and adventure, and Nepalese mountains are very much known as the adventure tourism destination also. And mountains, they are the main source to maintain the global temperature also. Why this? Okay. If we just see the mountain characteristics, we see that as the altitude increases, it goes up, then the types of plant and species change. In the lowland, we see the tiger over there, and in the highland, in the top over there, we see some snow bear and so. And for the vegetation, in the lowland, we find tropical and subtropical forests, and in the upperland, it's alpine and tundra forests. So many varieties are there, and so many different kind of vegetation, different kind of animal species are there. And that means, that the livelihoods and the day-to-day practices are also changing as the altitude changes and so. So the concern is, for the mountain, the main concern is the global temperature is rising. And we have the evidence that year 2023 was the warmest on record as of now. And that was a mistake. Year 2024 could be warmer. That's the estimation and that's a projection. And we are aiming for 1.5 degrees Celsius. But 1.5 degrees Celsius is already too hot. And if we go beyond that 1.5 plus, then it will be very, very dangerous to the mountain and overall climate change. That is the main message of this picture. Sorry. And that's why we need urgent actions to address triple planetary crisis. The triple planetary crises are very clear. One is climate change, that is the main in the top, and it covers almost everything. And that causes to the biodiversity loss and the air pollution. And for the participants over here who have come for the first time in Nepal, and in this season, probably you wouldn't have seen this kind of haze in Kathmandu's sky and so in this season. But now, in the daytime, in the afternoon, you will be seeing so much hazes over here. And sometimes the flights are also disrupted and so, because the air pollution is increasing, because our mountains are also melting and so. Not moving? Okay. So the urgent actions is needed, as some figures showed in the right side is that when this air passes on, the overall glacier remain is decreasing and decreasing. In the year 2000, in the Hindu Kush Himalayas, the glacier lakes were almost at the 100%. But if we continue like this, then it will be almost zero when we reach to the 2300 and so. So this is in the Hindu Kush Himalaya, and tropical glaciers is also the same case, and also in the Alps, and again the Patagonia and Andes also the same case. So problem is not limited to the single geography; it is everywhere. And complete and irreversible loss of Earth's mountain glacier is imminent. So we have to save this, and we need the urgent actions and collaborative actions by everyone present here and present everywhere in the world. And we have some adaptation opportunities, but these are not only remained as the opportunities, but there are so many constraints and so many limitations too. Adaptation capacity of all countries are adversely affected. So as Nepal's also, and so as Bhutan's, and so as Bangladesh, every country we had the same type of things. And it might reverse the development gains that we have achieved in so many years. And it is not limited to the mountainous countries, because when all these mountains are changed, mountains are melted, and that doesn't only affect the mountainous country, but the countries in the downstream, countries in the coastal side and everything. So I just picked this from IPCC thing, that is climate change is a global threat to which all people and ecosystems are vulnerable. That means it's not limited to any country and any region and so. Without effective adaptation, climate change had the potential to reverse the development gains and push millions of people further into poverty. So we have worked hard for reducing the poverty in our country and in the global poverty also. And one of the main agenda for the sustainable development goal is also to reduce the poverty and reaching it to the almost zero level and so. But when we continue like this and the source of livelihood is gone and so our poverty level again could rise and so. And biophysical, institutional, financial, social, and cultural barriers can lead to soft and hard adaptation limits, and that is particularly combined. Sometimes they are combined, sometimes they are different, but again, they are threatened. They are the threats. Just let me cite some IPCC reports. IPCC special reports, including the sixth assessment report, it highlights the climate change impacts, particularly on the mountainous country. And Ishimura HiMap reports is also available, and it says that by the end of this century, 2/3 of the glacier of Hindu Kush Himalaya will be melted if the current situation continue. So this is very, very serious, and thus mountains are very much in peril. That means they are in serious danger. So this is not I am speaking. This is spoken by the different reports published by international organizations. What happens to the global, these glaciers melt, if the glaciers are keeping melting and so. The first one, rapid ice sheet melt could lead to catastrophic sea level rise. That was already said by some previous speakers too. And Nepal's glacier melts have the impact of Bangladesh also, because the mountains are source for some of the water rivers in Bangladesh, and when it flows highly and the flood level rises, and then the sea level over there rises, and then the Bangladesh will also be affected. So this is an example only, but this is not only the case of Nepal and Bangladesh. So there are so many, because Bangladesh honorable minister is there, so I'm just citing this slide over here. This is the impact of glacier melts. That was in 2022, the left one. This is in Uttarakhand, India. And 81 people died by this glacier lake burst, and 281 roads, including the national highway, also blocked. So that means that completely blocked the livelihood. And the right side video is from 2023, and that was in Sikkim, India. And that time, 82 people died. 7,644 people desperately, they were displaced by the floods. And 1,200 megawatt hydropower projects and several other roads and bridges were, they swept away. That means this catastrophe can happen anytime, anywhere in the world. Who have the direct impact over there. And in Nepal, we also witnessed severe floods in 2022 in Melanchi area. This Melanchi is one of the sources for drinking water supply in Kathmandu. And it caused huge economic loss. And it was estimated that the per household loss, economic loss, was then $52,000 US. That means nearly 6 million Nepalese rupees per household. So that was, in a poor economy and poor community over there, 6 million Nepalese rupees count a lot. And that was the per household loss was there. And it disrupted the water supply to Kathmandu. And another case, and this is this video, that was the flood in Melanchi in 2022. And another case, we experienced unprecedented floods in Kali Gandaki River. It's in the western part of the country. And probably that was the first time in history that we had witnessed that type of flood in that particular river. Otherwise, that region was always in the dry and so. But the unprecedented flood didn't give us any time to prepare and all those things, and the settlement were swept away at that time. And this glacier melt impacts in the downstream is, if you see the left side video and falling down of one building over there, this is in the western part of country, in Dachula, when the borderline river was, having the huge flood over there, and the huge building completely drowned away. So too much water is very bad, and too little water causes the desertification. So when this glacier melt is having impact, the downstream will be impacted seriously, and so that is the message of this slide. The seriousness over there. So what are the things there? We need the solution for the food and water safety, security, and so, because our food habit and our food source is also the vegetation, and if we don't get the water, then vegetation wouldn't be happening. That's why we seriously need to work for the food and water security, and water is also there. And also we need the solutions for health security. When the climate change, and everyone knows that there is this seasonal type of diseases that comes, and sometimes it outbreaks, and people will be affected severely. And for energy security, because one of the major renewable energy is hydropower, and then for energy security also we need water. For maintaining the biodiversity, it is needed. For inclusiveness, it is needed. And for preserving the cultures and indigeneity, because the habitats are over there, people are living over there, so their cultures and indigeneity also need to be protected. And mountain definitely serve all these things. That's why we need the solutions for mountains, and the health of the mountains. But to do all these things, we have the huge financial gap. I have shown some of the data over there, some of the graphs there. And every country needs the huge financial requirements over there. And Nepal particularly, for the adaptation cost, it is $47 billion US we need. And for the mitigation, this is for the 33 billion US dollar. And that is that we extracted it from NDC that we prepared some time ago. And every country is preparing their NDCs. And when they come to their the finalization of the NDCs, and we'll know exactly cost of what requirement is needed for mitigating and adapting the climate change issue and so. So let me just show you one thing over here. Last year, the UN Secretary General visited Nepal, and he himself went to two mountain bases. One is in the Everest, the highest mountain in the world, and another one is the Annapurna. And he witnessed the climate change impact on the mountains. Earlier, all the mountains would be covered by snow, and all mountains would have been white. But when he came at that time, they were almost black. And he witnessed himself. And when he came to Kathmandu, and he strongly voiced that Nepal is contributing 0.00001% in the climate change, but paying one of the highest prices of the climate change. So that was his version. And the same thing he reiterated in the COP28 also. The same voice he reiterated. And the case is not confined to Nepal only. This is similar to all the mountainous country and so. Many of us, we contribute less or minimal or negligible, but again, we pay a high price. So what for the mountainous country, and what I showed the financial gap over there, we are severely impacted by temperature rise. That means that impacts the glacier melting and glass. And then we experience so many climate-induced disasters. So who compensates us? Who saves our mountain and who compensates us? That is the thing. Because we contribute less in global temperature rise, but again we are paying the prices. And for the environmental services also, our mountains provide fresh water, clean air, healthy ecosystems, and that is the source for drinking water, irrigation, and hydropower. So these payments are not also priced. So neither we are getting the compensation, nor nobody is paying the price. So how to meet all this financial gap is really a question, is really a billion-dollar question actually. So we should work together to find the solution for this. What then? Then global collective action for below 1.5 degrees Celsius is seriously needed. And we need to strengthen our partnership for a unified voice to address the irreversible impacts on mountains and beyond, and educate affordable and accessible finance to respond to the needs and priorities of countries with vulnerability and with more vulnerabilities. They should be given the higher priorities, and prioritize knowledge generation and technological advancement in the mountainous region. And this dialogue, these 2 days dialogues, to inform the UNFCCC expert dialogue on mountains and climate change next month to be held in Germany. And continued platforms are needed to address the concerns of climate crisis on mountains and its implications to low-lying countries. And so I'm not talking about our countries, the high-lying countries and only, but the low-lying countries should also be very much concerned about this. And so I'm almost coming to the closure of my presentation. So what are the take-home messages that I want to give you? The mountains are important source for water and livelihood and balancing the global temperature. That is obvious, everyone says so, but the action we need. Climate change poses a serious threat to the mountains. And this agenda is not limited to mountainous country alone, as the impact could be everywhere, to every country, to every parts of the world. And serious actions are needed to address the climate crisis and to save the mountains. And huge financing gap need to be filled. And ambition 1.4 or below to be the serious global agenda, actually to be the serious committed global agenda. So I conclude my presentation. Thank you.
Friends, we are gathered here at a critical moment, a moment that calls for urgent and transformative action, a moment that warrants unwavering commitment and collective resolve, a moment that demands unison in our oath to safeguard our planet and our future. Now more than ever, the adverse impacts of climate change are being felt intensely across the world, increasing in both intensity and urgency. We must take bold actions to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius as outlined in Paris Agreement. It is our collective responsibility to rescue our planet and people. Though the window of opportunity is swiftly narrowing, a ray of hope still shines through. I believe today's dialogue is crucial for addressing vulnerable communities' plight, fostering partnerships to confront the urgent climate crisis impacting not only mountains but beyond up to the ocean. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the Himalayas, home to 15% of the global population and generously supplying fresh water to over a third of the globe, are the bedrock of civilizations, ecosystems, and biodiversity, serving as a vital source of livelihood for billions of people living in downstream. Yet the very source of lives and livelihood, a vast treasure of snow and glaciers, are being depleted due to rising temperatures, also threatening the majestic beauty of mighty Himalayas. For us, the stakes are extremely high. Despite our negligible contribution to greenhouse gas emission,
we are bearing the brunt of climate change, which is deep, direct, and disproportionate. It is an injustice that demands immediate rectification. The rate of warming in mountain areas is disproportionately higher than in the plains. Research indicates that the average temperature in the mountains could rise by over 1.8 degrees Celsius by 2050, starkly surpassing the global target of 1.5 degrees Celsius. This poses dire threats to mountain livelihoods, leading to resource degradation, declining production, and displacement of people along with their cultural heritage and practices. A persistent concern is the threat of glacial lake outburst, floods, with projections indicating that over 80% of glacier volume could vanish by 2100. Let me recall the recent visit of UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres to Nepal, where he highlighted the severe impact of climate change on the Himalayas and called for greater international support to accelerate climate action. The latest IPCC assessment underscores how climate change harms mountain livelihoods, emphasizing the urgent need for tailored mitigation and adaptation plans. The report also underscores that 1.5 degrees Celsius is still feasible with urgent and ambitious action. Our second National Climate Change Survey 2022 revealed that the adverse impact of climate change has brought shocking effects on communities, transportation, water resources, biodiversity, agriculture, health, and the economy. The intensification of extremes ranging from searing temperatures to raging wildfires paints a striking picture of the soaring crisis. Moreover, the emergence of new crop diseases and pests casts a shadow over the livelihoods of millions of farmers, while the surge in vector-borne diseases shackle the urban healthcare systems. Drought and insufficient as well as excessive rainfall have added woes to the worries. This underscores the pressing need for adaptive strategies with science, sustainability, and solidarity to unlock solutions for sustainable yet prosperous future. Ladies and gentlemen, Nepal has long prioritized mountain and climate change issues, starting with National Adaptation Plan of Action in 2009 and recently unveiling the National Adaptation Plan 2021-2050. This plan sets out adaptation goals for 2050, priority programs for 2040, and immediate actions for 2030, addressing 64 climate risks and vulnerabilities. Our nationally determined contributions and climate finance strategies align with the 1.5 degree Celsius target. We aim for net zero emissions, leveraging hydropower for clean energy, and maintaining 45% forest cover. Nepal is committed to allowing 80% of climate change adaptation resources directly to local communities, fostering grassroots resilience and empowerment. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, we are not alone to suffer the most. There are other LDCs, mountainous and coastal countries too who shoulder a similar plight. Their limited fiscal space and resilient capacity pose serious constraints on their ability to implement climate actions. Furthermore, the flow of climate finance remains slow and insufficient to keep pace with the worsening impacts of climate change. For developed nations, it is their moral and legal obligation to reduce emissions and support countries like Nepal. This includes fulfilling commitments to climate finance mechanisms, such as the Green Climate Fund and recently established Loss and Damage Fund. Despite some progress, such as the establishment of these funds and creating disbursement mechanisms, the pace of action remains extremely slow compared to the urgency of the task. For instance, it took until 2023 for wealthy nations to fulfill their annual $100 billion commitment to the GCF, yet only 53% of these funds have been disbursed since 2020. Similarly, while the Loss and Damage Fund was established at COP28 last year, only $700 million has been raised, a tiny fraction of the estimated $400 billion needed globally for loss and damage caused by the climate events. The disparity between our targets and actions highlights the urgency of expediting our efforts to address this planetary crisis. Collective action is essential, and events like the dialogue can help accelerate our actions, making them more meaningful, inclusive, and evidence-based. So in this critical juncture, we urge developed economies and the international community to provide resources and technologies that are more predictable, adequate, and equitable, fostering a harmonious and sustainable global response. In terms of mitigation, we need for immediate and deep emissions reduction across all sectors by developed countries and major emitters is crucial to keep our 1.5-degree ambition alive. Our adaptation, doubling adaptation finance by 2025 is critical. Equally crucial is the scaling up of climate finance to bridge the $100 billion deficit, ensuring a balanced approach between adaptation and mitigation, with particular attention given to vulnerable countries. In addressing loss and damage, the Loss and Damage Fund must be predictable, simplified, and adequate for LDCs and mountainous countries to ensure climate justice. In this important event, I request all the experts, dignitaries, and participants to discuss 3 critical issues. First, Nepal is on a development path and has the opportunity to lead in climate resilient, inclusive, and green growth. We need to identify sectors where Nepal can not only leapfrog development initiatives, but also lead them. Second, we also need to enhance our capacity to access existing climate finance mechanisms for our adaptation efforts. Please come up with a solid plan of action that leverages international climate finances and attracts investments for sustainable development projects in Nepal. Third, to fight with climate crisis, we need evidence and knowledge about it and its impacts. Those knowledge and understanding will make our international negotiation and advocacy efforts credible and rational. Here, research plays a crucial role in generating knowledge and evidence. While these types of events are essential, we also need to focus on generating credible, relevant, and useful knowledge.
Your active participation, ideas and opinions, insightful thoughts and rich experiences will foster a collaborative and enriching environment to the appropriate climate action. Climate change is a global and cross-cutting issue. We will know that we all are disproportionately impacted across the countries. Both mountains and island countries and their people are facing multiple crises of temperature risk, erratic rainfall, drought and desertification, landslides, floods, inundation, forest fire, glacier melting and sea rise level. Climate incidents are unpredictable and unprecedentedly increasing every year. Distinguished participants, the advertise that impact climate change in the mountain countries are higher than elsewhere in the world. Therefore, I appeal to all mountainous countries and developed countries to allocate additional financial resources for adaptation with open hearts and minds so that we can collectively address the climate crisis. I urge the international communities and parties to discuss in the upcoming expert dialogue on mountains and climate change on 5th June in Germany and take additional decisions on mountains and amplify the finance and adaptation targets for the sake of mountain communities for their lives and livelihoods. I kindly request the Sabsta chair to take our message on why and how mountainous issues are important in the climate negotiation process. Excellencies, Mr. Hari Sabsta Chair, I am looking for your crucial role as an ambassador of mountainous countries to give a sense of urgency to the international communities to take appropriate action on mountains and their people in the upcoming COP 2029 and beyond. Finally, I would like to share my sincere thanks to our collegians, both advisory and organizing committee members, volunteers and media colleagues who have worked tirelessly to ensure the smooth execution of this event. Your hard work and meticulous planning have made this dialogue not only possible but also resounding success. Similarly, I am deeply grateful to our all collaborating partners, particularly USAID, Biodiversity Project, and UN agencies. Thanks for UNDP for overall coordination and unconditional support. This event is an example of true partnership and cooperation. Your contributions have been instrumental in bringing this event to our goal and in furthering our collective mission to promote sustainable mountain development as well. Last but not least, I convey my sincere thanks to our Right Honorable Prime Minister, fellow ministers from Bangladesh and Bhutan, the ambassador from Kyrgyzstan Republic, the coordinator of Mountain Partnership, Mr. Hana, and all UN agencies, ADB and World Bank colleagues, ICMOL colleagues, IWMI colleagues, all international experts, moderators, speakers and penalties and media colleagues for your inevitable contribution and for making this international expert dialogue on mountains, people and climate change to make the event grand success in next 2 days for the first time of its kind. I look forward to the continued collaboration and positive outcomes that will surely emerge from our collective efforts in the days to come. I wish you all a mesmerizing and pleasant experience here at one of the most beautiful hill stations here in Chandragiri, Nepal. Thank you.
यहाँको समस्याहरू बुझियो हैन, बिरामीको चाप पनि बुझियो, बिरामीको समस्या पनि बुझियो र जुन वीर अस्पतालको आफ्नो जुन संरचना छ भौतिक संरचना लगायतको कुरा पनि बुझियो, जनशक्तिको बारेमा पनि बुझियो। यसमा खास गरेर जनशक्तिको पनि कमी धेरै रहेको छ हैन, र सेवा गरी आउँदा सेवा गरी टाइम लाग्ने हैन, मेडिसिनमा पनि औषधि लिन जाँदा पनि घन्टौँ बस्ने हैन, बिमाको साथीहरू आउँदा पनि औषधि चाहिँ सबै औषधि नपाउने, यो सब लगायत। अनि इमर्जेन्सीमा पनि चाप त्यतिकै एउटा बेडमा 3टा मेल फिमेल पनि राखेको पनि हेरियो हैन। यो सबले गर्दा निश्चित रूपमा स्वास्थ्य मन्त्रालय यो विषयमा गम्भीर भएको छ र यसलाई चाहिँ कसरी चाहिँ सुधार गर्ने त्यो विषयमा हामीले मन्त्रालयमा बसेर हाम्रा टिमसित छलफल गरेर निष्कर्षमा पुग्छौँ। अब हिजो कसले के गर्नुभयो मलाई त्यो मतलब छैन, म कार्यान्वयन गर्छु र गरेर देखाउँछु, त्यो अठोटको साथ म काम गरिरहेको छु। त्यसकारण वीर अस्पतालबाट म सुरु गरेँ, किनकि देशभरिका चाहिँ बिरामीहरू यहाँ आउने, देशभरिका चाप पनि यहाँ परेको हुनाले निश्चित रूपमा पहिले वीर अस्पतालबाट सुधारको सुरुवात गरौँ, अनि बाँकी सबै अस्पतालमा पनि सुरुवात गर्ने। तर कहीँबाट सुरु त गर्नुपर्छ, त्यसकारण मेरो सुरुवात नै वीर अस्पतालबाट भएको छ। र यहाँ अब नयाँ बिल्डिङ पनि बनेको छ हैन, तर जनशक्ति छैन। हिजोको दिनमा पनि अब सुनियो कि धेरै जनशक्ति यहाँबाट हटाइयो, के कारणले हटाइयो त्यो विषयमा पनि म बुझ्छु हैन, र यसलाई गम्भीरतापूर्वक मैले लिएको छु र मलाई विश्वास छ, मेरो मनले भन्छ हैन कि म यो कार्यान्वयन गरेर देखाउँछु।